I'm going to discuss the various metabolic states of the body. And first of all, it's important to understand that the body wants to generally maintain a steady state. Keep in mind that organic molecules like carbohydrates and lipids are continuously being broken down and then rebuilt. So ideally, the body wants to maintain the same rate of anabolism as it has for catabolism. And the body uses its nutrient pools to meet all of its energy needs. The nutrient pools include the amino acid pool, which is shown here, and the carbohydrate and fat pool. The amino acid pool is just all the body's supply of free amino acids that are not part of proteins. Most of these amino acids are used to make new proteins. They're used in protein synthesis, protein anabolism. Only a small amount are lost through urine excretion and also the shedding of hair and skin. Because remember, you have a lot of protein in your skin in the form of keratin and in your hair as well. If absolutely necessary, amino acids can be converted to glucose and used for energy, but typically that's not necessary because your body has sufficient amounts of either glycogen or lipids to use for energy instead. The other main pool is carbohydrate and fat pools, and these are usually grouped together since carbohydrates can easily be converted into fat. And because both of these nutrients are the ones that are typically broken down to make ATP. Both carbohydrates and fats can be stored as they are. Carbohydrates are stored as glycogen. Glycogen is a carbohydrate, and fats are stored as they are, and they're stored in adipose tissue. So the two main states of the body are either the absorptive state, also known as the feasting state, or the postabsorptive state, which is called the fasting state. I'll talk about the absorptive state first and just the various conditions and reactions that are happening in the body during this time. So first of all, this occurs when an individual has recently eaten a meal and it lasts for about 4 hours afterward. The primary source of energy during this time is glucose. We're assuming that the meal that's been eaten is pretty balanced, so it does contain carbohydrates, fats, and some protein as well. At this point, fats and amino acids that have just been consumed are used to either make new proteins, or the fats are used to replace the ones that have been used up during a time when you haven't just eaten. Any excess nutrients, and typically there will be excess. Usually we eat more than we need right away for energy. So excess nutrients are typically converted into fat if they're not used for anabolism, and then they're stored as fat. For the hormones that are involved, insulin is going to move any excess glucose out of the blood so that it can be stored in tissues. And in your study outline, there's a list of metabolic reactions that take place or that could take place during the absorptive state. So I actually listed a bunch of reactions, and for occurrence, we'll say whether or not they are happening during this time. So you do need to remember what these reactions mean. Remember that whenever you have the ending genesis, it means that you are forming or creating whatever molecule whose word root is in the first part of the word. And the ending lysis means the breakdown of the molecule that's part of the word. So first of all, we have glycogenesis. That is the formation of glycogen, and that will be occurring during this time. All the excess glucose that you've consumed, any excess carbohydrates, not just glucose, that you've consumed will be converted to glycogen. So you are making new glycogen, and then you're storing it to use later whenever you have not just eaten. Glycogenolysis. So are you breaking down glycogen during this time? No, you're making glycogen, you're not breaking it down. And gluconeogenesis, are you making glucose from a non-carbohydrate source? You would do that if you hadn't eaten in a while or if you were starving, and that's not the case. So this reaction isn't happening either. Lipogenesis, that is the formation of lipids. And yes, that is happening. You're taking all these excess nutrients that you've just ingested and using them to make new lipids, make new proteins, make new carbohydrates. So yes, this reaction is happening. Lipolysis, the breakdown of lipids. No, that one's not happening. Protein synthesis, is that happening during this time? Yes. Proteolysis? No, that one's not happening. So typically the genesis or synthesis or anabolic reactions are happening, and the breakdown reactions are not happening during the absorptive state. At this point, you have like plenty of nutrients, so you're just building up your energy stores. Kind of related to this is diabetes mellitus. It just makes sense to talk about it here because it's related to insulin. This is a disorder when insulin is either not being produced at all, or the body's insulin receptors are not responding to insulin. So the result of this is that glucose isn't moved from the blood into your body cells or tissues. So glucose is unavailable to cells. Blood glucose levels remain high, though, and therefore large amounts of glucose will be excreted in the urine because it's just building up in the blood and you have to get rid of it. So under those circumstances, because glucose isn't being moved into cells, so it can't be utilized by cells, instead fats and proteins are being used by cells for energy. So that's going to result in weight loss, protein wasting, and also potentially metabolic acidosis, because you're using so many fats for energy that you're ending up with ketone bodies and it causes ketosis. Okay, so kind of the opposite of that state is the postabsorptive state. This is pretty much the exact opposite. So this is when you have not eaten in a while, you're in between meals. So it's been several hours since you've last eaten, but the body still needs to maintain a certain glucose level within the blood so that cells can grab that glucose out of the blood and use it for energy. So the main source of energy at this point is all of the stored nutrients. So it's in the form of either glycogen or fats. Sources for energy, sources of glucose. I have them listed in your outline in order that they will be used. So first of all, you're going to use glycogen. You'll use the glycogen that gets stored in the liver first, and then you'll use the glycogen that gets stored in your skeletal muscles. Once that's used up, then the body will use fats for energy. So you have a huge store of fat, and your body is just going to use all the fat that's located in adipose tissue primarily. There's also a little bit in the liver if absolutely necessary. And then if really necessary, your body is then going to use protein for energy, only if it has to. So the hormones that regulate the post-absorptive state are really just glucagon, which is the opposite of insulin. It raises blood glucose levels. Okay, so we'll go through the same list of reactions and just discuss whether or not they happen during this state. And it's pretty much, actually it is the exact opposite from what we said for the absorptive state. All right, so glycogenesis. Are you making new glycogen? No. So you've not just eaten, you don't have all these nutrients available. At this point, you're actually, remember, breaking down all of your nutrient stores for energy. So you're breaking down glycogen, you're not creating it. So glycogenesis is not happening, but glycogenolysis is. You're breaking down glycogen to release glucose so that that can be used to make ATP. Gluconeogenesis, this is most likely also happening. You're making glucose from non-carbohydrates. So once you use up your glycogen, then your body is going to need to use fats. So this is using other nutrients to generate glucose to use for energy. So yes, that is happening. Lipogenesis, that is not happening. You're not making new lipids, but you are breaking down lipids. You're using the lipids that you have stored in adipose tissue as an energy source. So lipolysis is happening. Protein synthesis is not happening. You don't have tons of amino acids that are freely available that you can use to make new proteins. However, proteolysis might be happening. That's only going to happen if absolutely necessary, though. So remember, your body is going to use glycogen first. It's going to perform glycogenolysis. Then it's going to perform lipolysis, breaking down lipids and using those for energy. If it needs to, then yes, proteolysis would happen at this point. It just depends on how much of the other nutrient stores you have in your body.